Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you're here. This is the Daily Medicine Transmission for December 30th, 2021. Oh, wow, we're getting so close to the end of this shit show of a year. So welcome back, everyone. Thank you for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you, regardless of what platform you're finding me on, if you're a subscriber, if you comment on this content on a regular basis, whatever it is that your contribution is. I really, really appreciate it. And if you're new here, thanks for dropping by. Thanks for being here. And if you do find this content inspiring, helpful, and you want to support it and you want more of it, you can subscribe if you're not already subscribed here on YouTube or BitChute, or like this video if you actually do like this video, and that way it is more likely to be recommended to other people. I do have several regular viewers, subscribers, and clientele of my services that have found me randomly through mostly BitChute. I don't get any traction on YouTube, and there is a very sophisticated algorithm system that they use to passive aggressively suppress people so that they don't have to, host your content when you aren't making them any money. So, of course, but I mean, I don't even have ads on my videos at this point, so I don't even know why they bother trying to suppress me. But anyway, welcome, guys. It's the 30th. How are you feeling? Some of you may be feeling very tired. Some of you may be feeling tired because you haven't slept. I will say that the solar activity has abated just a little bit. We did have a couple solar flares over the last couple days. The Schumann resonance has been correspondingly active to the increased activity in the ionosphere. So there have been spikes in the amplitude, of course, and the quality of the Schumann has been fairly erratic and kind of all over the place, but it's starting to calm down right now. Of course, that's not going to stay that way, as we know, because we are in solar cycle 25, which is our solar maximum. So there's going to be more solar activity. It's going to continue to build more sunspots, more flares. There may be a CME, a very faint CME or coronal mass ejection over the weekend, but right now it's pretty mellow. But the astrology is not mellow at all. And in fact, we're processing a lot of very deep information right now. And with Mercury meeting Pluto today, our moon is still moving through Scorpio. Oh my gosh. And is going to move into Sagittarius today. Mars is at the degree of the solar eclipse that we had on the 4th. We're still in that cycle, by the way, that lunar cycle that started with a full moon solar eclipse. We're still here. We are about to wrap it up. Our new moon in Capricorn is on the 2nd of January, but we're still technically in that cycle. So Mars meeting that point today, the sun coming into the same position by tomorrow, or the moon coming into the same position by tomorrow. There is we're going to take some time here to reacquaint ourselves with what the new moon and the solar eclipse really represents for all of us. So, of course, knowing where these positions are and these points of reference are in your own chart is going to direct you to the area of life and how it may be interacting with other things in your life. But for the most part, in a general sense here, we're going to be revisiting the aspects that absolutely need to be brought up and purified from previous cycles, right? Karmic retribution. And that sounds a lot worse than it actually really is. We love to use the word retribution, karmic retribution, when referencing other people, but we never want to apply it to ourselves. But Mercury and Pluto coming together today is very deep psychoanalysis and self-analysis, certainly some very deep revelations and realizations, very powerful, occult, hidden. Pluto does rule Scorpio, and so the sexual element is very strong with Pluto just in general. And because of the power that is inherent in that type of relationship and that type of communion, but also too that it's power that comes, from within and without as a result of that relationship. And so there is a revelation in some ways to our mind through communication, in the realm of ideas and concepts. And I think one thing that's coming to mind about it is the jury conviction of Ghislaine Maxwell. There's 5 out of 6 counts, I believe, that she was charged, or she was convicted guilty. So I think that it definitely falls into the category of, these very deep, underlying but very powerful aspects coming up to the surface to be communicated, to be mentally interacted with, and to give us a chance to really process in our minds. But Mars too, coming at that degree of the solar eclipse, I mean, it's going to be very forceful in terms of the surfacing of that which may cloud the next cycle, right? Just because the cycle has ended does not mean that there isn't some garbage left over, right? That there isn't some sort of karmic residue that is going to make its way into the next cycle. And the thing about Jupiter in Pisces that has really been interesting to me is that true inner vision, right? Jupiter in Pisces certainly it is in familiar and powerful territory in Pisces. It is the co-ruler of Pisces. And moving into this realm, there's endless expansion into an infinite space, an endless expansion of mind and optimism and ideas into an infinite space. But part of that is that you can't escape from anything when all is one. And there's something that's, how do I put this? There, Jupiter is, if you want to stay in Jupiter's good graces, you better be ready to accept the responsibility in the terms of the agreement, regardless of what comes up, because that's kind of the disempowering and ultimately, what drives people mad is the fact that nothing can be separate from anything else once you're in the realm of Pisces. It's all the same at that point. And so what you sow, you absolutely are going to reap. And Jupiter is going to make that very big and very large, and very bombastic in a lot of ways. And so for Mars to be in Sagittarius at this point today, that karmic residue that absolutely needs to come out is going to come out. And maybe very forcefully, we may find ourselves wanting to act on that as well. So it's going to be an interesting day. Wait till we see the reading, because it is, again, it's not very easy. The energy of this week is not easy, and it continues to be reflected in the readings. And of course, the astrology is just our temporal markers for all of these things. And the geometry of all of the planets and objects and positions and the relationship they have to each other is creating its own resonance and frequency that we can either align and harmonize with, or there can be dissonance. So it's really up to us. But the moon in Scorpio is going to be the centerpiece, I think, of today's energy as well. So I'm going to check in with the chat here and the stream and just make sure everything is good to go. So it's really good to see everybody. I hope everybody's doing well, taking good care of themselves, getting ready for New Year's Eve, whatever that's going to provide for all of us. And our new moon in Capricorn, remember, let it burn, because that is the only way to purify. It really is. And that's the power of fire, is that simultaneous ability to destroy and to renew at the very same time, which is why it is so indicative of spiritual maturity, transformation, creation, right? The force of fire is so much more connected to spiritual transformation than I think than any of the other elements. So we're just going to get right into the reading here in 1 second. Let me take a sip of this coffee here. Okay, my magic bean juice that I love so much. Yeah, I pulled my back out, or I threw my back out it was very subtle. It could have been so much worse. And so my body is just like, it's just done for. Plus, it's just, very cyclical things as well. I could sleep forever. That's what it feels like right now. And maybe that's not such a terrible thing, considering that the energy of today has really got us in battle mode, potentially. Social justice battle mode with Mars and Sagittarius. So I'm going to get right into the reading. We're going to take a moment here to ground ourselves, get ourselves connected to the planet, to the earth, to ourselves, and start going through this reading and start transmuting what, like I said, is promising to be a very difficult energy. Although what you can see right off the bat is we have the same outcome as yesterday's reading, but it's in a different position now. It's upright. So there's a sense of completion. The moon is at the center of this reading today. So going into the abyss of our soul, right? This is at the heart of the matter. And with a moon in Scorpio, meeting Mercury meeting Pluto, and all of the connections to the Capricorn energy from the moon today. This is not very surprising at all that we are now, something has come full circle and we are now going into the depths of something. And Mercury meeting Pluto is just making it that much more accessible to our active and conscious mind, which is not the case normally with the moon card and the moon in Scorpio and all of the elements that have to do with going into the darkness, facing our own shadow, going into the abyss of our soul, and being able to come back out of it with wisdom and a sense of spiritual maturity. But remember, Mercury or Hermes is the only character, the only deity that can move in and out of the underworld without being stuck there. No other deity, including Zeus, right? Zeus was the top dog. I mean, even Zeus couldn't manage going into this realm, even though Hades or Pluto is his brother. It's only Hermes. There's something very special about Hermes and Mercury that allows for the seamless transition back and forth. And the idea that consciousness survives past death, I think, is a big part of why the ancients and the mythological context would provide for this. Now, Mercury also, or Hermes, was often thought of as a shepherd of souls as well. So there's a functionality here of our consciousness being able to lead us into death and into the next cycle, whatever it is that we, come back into form. However, and this, your belief system is your belief system. However you wrap yourself around these concepts is really between you, yourself, and God. But the idea here is that the mind and our consciousness exists beyond the mortal coil and the very natural but consistent duality of life and death. And so there's something to be gained by going into this realm and coming back out. And Mercury is really assisting with that today in terms of its connection to Pluto. And we are talking about Capricorn, so we're still talking about the material world, the institutions that form the structure and the fortress of our collective reality. What is it that we've contributed to building? It gives us a sense of tradition and culture and, like I said, security, and provides for our safety. All of those things are Capricornian elements. So it's hard to move past that, which is, again, when we talked about yesterday, the devil card in the tarot, and how the man and the woman are seemingly chained to the devil or chained to its throne, when really they can just slip off the chains very easily and liberate themselves from not so much the material world, but through their attachment to it, to the fact that their soul or their spirit or their peace, the peace that is inseparable from God or the Great Spirit, is, not subject to the material cycles. So that is the liberation from that moment. But anyway, we do see too as well that with this very difficult work that we're going to be really addressing today, that there is now a sense of actual accumulation of wealth and resources, that what we had been grasping for just yesterday in terms of the fruits of our labor, now that there is something that's completing and that we actually are able to go into the depths of our own soul and go through this process of the dark night, whatever that means to us, there is something to truly be gained from it, as opposed to yesterday, which really showed how the cruelty of our own endless analyzing, or the cruelty that we may feel or experience as a result of following a course of mental thought that takes us to the end, regardless of what the outcome is, and having to accept it and just wanting it to burn away, right? And there's something to be said for that burning away. But this has an element of completion, of course, with the Four of Wands, but also with the Ten of Discs, right? There's still a completion element. And so even our perspective has the opportunity to be shifted or turned on its head or turned upright when it comes to all of the fruits of our labor, all of the wealth and security and material success that the Ten of Discs represents. And it doesn't have to be financial, right? It can be your well-being and your healing capacity. That's part of Virgo too, is the act of healing. It could be your energetic resources. It could just be your service, what it is that you're doing on a daily basis and what you are making out of what you have. Virgo is material. It is earthbound. It is mutable, but it's absolutely still about the material aspect. So it's related to a lot of different stuff. So before we get into the full experience of the reading, let's take a minute here to get ourselves grounded. So we're going to take a moment here to feel our feet on the floor, or our sits bones on the floor, or both, depending on where you're finding yourself. If you're sitting directly on the floor, or if you're sitting in a chair, or even if you're standing, we're going to feel that connection to what is beneath us. Take a deep breath in. And release. This bowl that's tuned to C major and the root chakra. It's very important today because the sun now is moving into the territory of the Lyran constellation. So the Lyran starseed activations are about to get very heavy, and in a good way, right? Because the Lyran starseeds are the ones who look fear in the face and they're like, all right, whatever, I'm going to walk past you now and keep on with what I'm doing, right? Fear is the mind killer, according to the novel Dune, right? That aspect is something that needs to be acknowledged, but then walked through. And the Lyran starseeds are exactly the people that embody this capacity probably the best. And so with the sun coming into the first of the Lyran starseed markings today, the root chakra that is so connected to the Lyran starseed signature is also very important. We need to feel a sense of security and connection to the physical world, and our safety established as just being in this body, right? Your body and your gut and your instinct will give you the signals that you need when there's actual danger, when you actually need to make a move to keep yourself safe. Having a very strong and rooted and vibrant root chakra is essential to feeling safe and secure in the world. And if this is not established, it's very difficult for the rest of the energy body to also feel safe and open enough to, each chakra wants to be functioning properly and spinning and emitting energy and healthy. And when the root chakra is compromised in some way, it's very difficult for the rest of them to operate in their full capacity. So it's really important to start here. And this is something that gets bypassed so much in a lot of the new age or spiritual aspects, because it's always on these upper chakras. And if we're not, and really, eliminating so much of the care and the necessity of still being in a physical body. So when you are attuned, when the master attunement for Reiki, for instance, is very much sent, it's very much incorporates a strong root chakra in your master attunement. Because again, without that strong root chakra that connects you to the very nature of reality and material safety and security, without that, where do you gather really your power? So the Lyran starseed signature is about to become very important over the certainly in the next couple of weeks as the sun transits through the Lyran constellation. And today is kind of the first lead up to that and the first real marker for that. So, and we need that. I mean, we're embarking on some very deep, dark territory right now that if we're not prepared for it, can be very destabilizing. To have Mercury meet Pluto is bringing a lot of stuff up to the conscious mind that has to do with normally what is hidden or repressed. I mean, Pluto does stand for a lot of the things that we repress and suppress, or remains repressed, because it is hiding under the surface. It is hiding in all of the dark corners of our subconscious and our own soul, because it is so intense that when it finally is released or acknowledged, it's transformational beyond anything else, right? You never go back when you have these massive Pluto transits. Okay, so that's a pretty clear indication, considering the fact that the United States is in early 2022 is going to have its Pluto return, right? That means Pluto's returning to the point of the natal Pluto of the United States. This is a point of no return. I mean, we've had to really accept this. And for people that are continuing to hold on to what is pretty clearly dying in terms of the political structure and the actual institutional structure of this country, is really going to struggle incredibly. And so, Pluto transits are transformational to the point where there is nothing to go back to. It has been destroyed. It has been composted and mulched and turned into fertilizer for something new to grow. There's no going back and doing anything about it. And why would you? I mean, the whole point of all of this is to grow and to evolve. That's why we're here. So let's start with this. Let's start here, my friends. All right, first of all, this completion, right? The Four of Wands. This is definitely a moment of completion with the Four, right? This is a stable, This has to do, again, the Four is the square, right? The four-sided shape here. And completion is a very interesting way to think about this, because we are still early in the wand suit. The Four is just a momentary security and stability. But Venus in Aries, it's really suggesting that there is some sort of creative plan or creative work or some sort of force of individual subjective experience with Aries that is reached some type of condensation, right? Venus representing Taurus, for instance, is reaching a moment of condensation, of becoming real and condensed. And so there is something that has finished, or a plan has completed, or was successful. And the fire is settling, right? And reigns over its realms. This also feels a lot like what will be a momentary completion or settling. Sure, it won't stay that way, but for right now, it at least is settling down while we're integrating all of that incredible amount of information that we received as a result of these flares. And what it's doing, I mean, there was a massive earthquake, over 7 on magnitude, that was in, the Pacific near Indonesia. And there's just a ton of activity, seismic activity still, but that was a big one. We haven't, like, over 7 magnitude. I mean, I'm not sure when the last time we saw that, but it hasn't been recently. So there are very large adjustments that are happening as well. So a lot of times, even though that this has to do with completion and something has been successful, or the work has been done, right? Because Aries does represent some sort of action. It oftentimes is some sort of failure, or seems to be a failure, because it's a lesson that we end up learning as a result of the failure. So the work has been done. It may not have turned out the way we wanted it to in terms of the material aspect, but it has allowed us to achieve some level of spiritual maturity. So something has come into completion. There is a moment of the cycle coming back around in terms of what we are creating, how we're transforming, some sort of action, and some sort of action in a personal or individual subjective way that is reaching some sort of condensation in this moment that comes full circle. So this can have a lot of different indications here, but it's the idea that something that we have been working with in terms of fire, creation, transformation, spirituality has come full circle. And there's a moment here where we can see the full picture, and we can see it condensed into something stable. And it's not going to stay this way. It never does. But it's momentary. And so there is a lot of ways that this can be brought around. And I would say with Mars in Sagittarius reaching the point of the eclipse today, this is a big part of it. Certainly Mercury and Pluto coming together also is kind of a moment of realization and maybe condensation, but certainly a realization or a surfacing of that which is below. But I would say that that's much more part of the moon in terms of a representation of what's happening. This is some sort of creative process that has come to a level of completion so that we can see it in its entirety. So when we come to the heart of the moment with the moon here, number 18, leading up to number 9, so we know that this is a culmination. One thing that I find really interesting is that also, too, that the up in the air card from yesterday's transmission also is number 18. There is a sense of having to trust and not being able to see things very clearly when you're in this moon in Scorpio underworld. Now, you do see that the sign of Pisces is related to this card because it is the water that is everything, and the moon represents our personalized experience of the everything that Pisces represents. It's encased within us and our own experience. So, but the moon very simply represents the dark knowledge of the soul, moon in Scorpio, right? This is where the moon is right now. So it's leading us to the abyss of our soul. So there are no words, just images and notions. Now, Mercury is going to make this a different story for us. It's going to give a verbal or a literary or just an empirical way of understanding, or certainly being able to see something in terms of words or data rather than just images and notions, although it may be very difficult to interpret at first. So this is a journey into the dark night. We have to look behind our own face. Again, Mercury and Pluto coming together, looking behind our own face, especially when it comes to the occult or hidden energy that is very real and pervasive throughout all of our material reality, which is nothing more than the power of our relationships, is the power that holds it all together. So the unvarnished truth is not pleasant, and we want to ignore these things, right? But the thing is, we're never going to see the light until we face the darkness, right? And this is what the moon card and the symbolic representation provides for us. And it is a serious danger to confront the dark side of ourselves, the dark side of anybody else or an institution, because we may not come back from it, right? When you have the moon in Scorpio, especially, the tendency is very much to sink into the abyss and not be able to pull ourselves back out of it. So there's always a serious danger with this journey. because we are exploring the depths of the soul. So what is the possibility here, though? Wisdom, maturity, deep self-realization. These are all very important and positive types of experiences, but it comes at a price, and it comes with a lot of fear. And this is again why we, the Lyran aspect of where the sun is today, is really going to assist in this process, as long as we realize that fear is still going to be no matter what, and it's what we do with it and how we look past it in order to achieve whatever it is that we are going after. So the caught in the ruins in terms of our energetic root here is this is where it seems to get even more I would say difficult in general with this reading, right? So yes, there's come to a completion. We see something in its entirety that we have activated or we've been working on creating, transforming, and now that completion has been shown to us, and we are now making a descent into something that is very doesn't have any real stability and is very formless and dark. And when you're talking about caught in the ruins here, number 16, it's a pretty good indication that we do feel trapped, right? This is a dark or difficult situation that seems to have us trapped. Now, the aspect about this card that's really important to notice is that all these two have to do is look up and be like, oh, I can just climb out of this, right? This is an old structure that is dilapidated and falling apart, but there is still just a little bit left that tricks these two into thinking that they are in fact trapped when they're really not. It's just that they haven't changed their perspective enough to realize that it's all crumbling away, and has been for a long time. So there is a way out, but we have to put some determination and some effort into it, and realize that a lot of the limitations we're experiencing, not all of them, but many of them are self-imposed. So if we do nothing, then we perpetuate the attachment to the dark situation. This is the real downside to the moon today, is that if we do nothing, we are perpetuating our attachment to a dark situation, right? Hopeless, feeling like a victim. And negative choices could stand for a long time to come. That's something else that we can realize, that this is made out of stone, right? This is made out of stone, and the bars are likely some sort of iron, and they will stand for a long time. Now, the idea here is that it has crumbled away, and we can certainly take ourselves out of it. But we are, I think, collectively still feeling very trapped, and this becomes even more so with the moon card here at the center, which is the descent into our own prison, our own self-imposed prison, emotionally, intuitively, psychically, even socially. But this is saying that we can draw our power, and we have the potential to draw our power from a place of just looking up and being like, oh, we can get ourselves out of here. But the descent into here, and the blindness and the darkness and the real challenge of seeing that we can easily get out of this is very real today. And when you see the guidance points around it, the birth card, number 4, again, reversed. I mean, we're really struggling to bring something new into form, right? To birth a new form, to step into a new project, to step into a new relationship, whatever it is. There is some struggle here, and part of it again is that we feel trapped, like we can never get out of this situation. But and we'll get to the rest of this in a minute, in terms of the guidance, because it's important to be able to look at what is at first. So the Queen of Roses is also reversed in the situation, and she is very passionate, but also very pure. She's very loving and compassionate, right? She's giving all of her attention and focus to this one rose bud right here, and she's surrounded by it, and she's surrounded by the walls of the castle. She is lifted up off of the off of the ground. You can tell that she's on, a higher level here based on the vantage point of this window. She has this really comfy throne here, but she is looking very lovingly and very focused on this aspect. Again, the reversal here is really suggesting that we are having serious disharmony and conflict, either with ourselves or a woman in our life. Maybe we're the woman that is stepping out of some sort of role as a caretaker or an incredibly nurturing person, but there's something that's not resonating with this setting anymore. It's not the romantic setting that we had maybe previously experienced. But one thing to keep in mind is that when it's reversed, it does indicate that there's a cycle of transformation that's happening. And just because there's one role and one door closing, or there's disharmony or conflict or anything to that, something's not resonating anymore, what it is doing is allowing us to refocus our attention on taking care of ourselves, letting go of those who are not fully present, or honoring us as an autonomous person. It allows space to open up for those who do honor us or are fully present. And it also suggests that there is some serious issues around our own self-love and a history of not caring for ourselves. So we have to also make our self-love a priority, which is very difficult when you are feeling very trapped in your circumstances, not seeing a way out, and you're just sinking deeper and deeper into the realm of your own soul and having to face yourself. So we could be very hard on ourselves. Instead of being self-loving and providing ourselves with care, we may be conflicted within ourselves, right? Maybe we are actually damaging ourselves and giving negative feedback to ourselves. And I think that that's a big part of what's happening just collectively too, is because, again, we feel trapped, we feel caught in something that is very easy to get out of if we just change our perspective. But without that perspective change, it does appear that we're trapped and you feel like a victim. And as you go deeper and deeper into yourself, it becomes more murky, it becomes darker, we become more scared, we want to avoid it. And ultimately, our attention is focused on this lack of self-love and care, or it could be towards other people as well. We might find ourselves really losing patience with people, not caring about their well-being, maybe realizing again that the people in our lives are not honoring us and not fully present with us. And so we want to make space for those people, or make space for new people to come in, but we also have to set boundaries. But ultimately, this feels a lot like the individual not fully loving themselves, right? And maybe it's because what you see in the mirror is really really difficult to look at, because we all have a shadow. And rather than acknowledging that we all have the potential to do terrible things and to be terrible people, because that's the nature of humanity, is that we all cast a shadow as a result of being in material form and imperfect. We may find ourselves as well acting out of that as well, like not being a very nurturing or compassionate or caring person, right? It could go a lot of different ways. But what I do see is, because there is this completion on one end and completion on the other, is that there is some work that can be done here, some intense work that can be done here that will lead us to fulfillment and realizing the complete amount of material gain and turning this around from yesterday, which is success and well-being and security and the richest potentials of this work really unfolding. It really does suggest to me that it's this inner work and the shadow work, especially with the moon in Scorpio and especially with Mercury meeting Pluto today, that acknowledging these things is allowing for a realization of all of our blessings, all of our material success, our healing, whatever it is, and coming to accept the end of the cycle and the beginning of something new. And we have all the resources that we need to then move on to the next cycle. So And we can look at that right here, see, with the wealth, right? It looks like the tree of life or the Kabbalah, right? It's all measured out in coins, right? Coins everywhere, right? Resources everywhere. And not because it's just fallen into our lap, because we've actually worked for it. This is the 6th house and Virgo. Work is, you better work. And if you want to reap anything, you have to sow it and cultivate it and care for it. And I think that we have to care for ourselves. And this is the other part of these kind of cards being reversed, is really a strong signal of not so much inversion, but introversion, right? Deep inventory. I've been talking about this with Venus and Capricorn now for the last week or so, is deep inventory. And so maybe too that we become aware of how much we have not been caring for ourselves. But again, the outcome here is very favorable if we take all of this into account, which is that, again, the cycle completes and we have a full, we have our coffers are full, right? We have our storehouse is full. We've pulled it all in and we're taking stock of it, and it's substantial. But it's not going to come without some real solid work in order to get there. And so when we look at the guidance points, so number 4, again, the birth. Right? You can see the 2 little kids, and there's a little doggy, and then there's presumably the mom or the maternal figure. There's like this stone circle type of thing in the background. And the idea in its reversal is that we may have difficulty in finding our purpose. We may we're waiting for a new purpose to be born. Maybe it's part of why this is happening is because we're still caught in our own past, right? With the caught in the ruins, right? We're still caught in the past of what is falling away, Pluto in Capricorn. There may be a delay with other new beginnings. An external opportunity may not have presented itself yet. Do you start to see a theme here with yesterday too, with up in the air? We're still trusting. We're still having to see that not everything has found its place yet. And so we may not have seen the external opportunity presenting itself yet. Doesn't mean it's not coming. It doesn't mean it's not being birthed. It's just not there yet. And so sometimes we have to work harder and gather courage to take the first step in this situation. And I would say that a new purpose is waiting to be born, but it's not quite ready to be born because we're still caught in the past and the discomfort with all of that. Now, the rattlesnake is a pretty good indication that this is all part of an initiation process, right? How are we going to know what it actually feels like and looks like? And the experience of being caught in our own self-imposed limitations and being caught in the past of what is falling away and how difficult it is to bring something new into the world. All of that is part of initiating ourselves into being some sort of healer or being some sort of guide or a lighthouse for people. Because it's in the experience of our own suffering that we truly develop actual compassion. And if we're suffering and struggling in this path, then we're going to be able to understand other people and then not, and be part of the solution and be part of caring for other people as well, as opposed to judgment or getting angry or attacking people. That's the other part, right? The rattlesnake and the serpent in general has the incredible healing component if used properly and not mishandled out of fear and self-preservation. Again, these themes keep coming up about fear and self-preservation. Now, the Wolverine is a lot tougher than you think, and we are a lot tougher than we think we are. The Wolverine, if you've ever seen them in action, oh my gosh, they are ruthless and brutal, but they're these like small little cute things, for the most part, till you see their claws. And they'll run off actual like lions from a kill because they are just relentless and they will just destroy, right? Their claws are huge and they have no fear. the Wolverine really has no fear. Their biggest asset as an animal and as a scavenger mostly is that they just won't back down, and they have no fear. They will take down a lion, or certainly scare one off in order to get its meal. And so there's something very powerful about the Wolverine that seems at first like it's not going to be much of a threat, but really will step into a position of power and aggressiveness when other animals may not do so. And when we're talking about, not really loving ourselves, not really feeling that amount of self-love, not feeling loved in general, right? Perhaps, again, clearing the way, and the Wolverine letting us know that we have, again, some work to do, but we have everything that we need in order to do so. It's just about having the capacity and the wherewithal and the fearlessness to take significant action to remove some type of obstruction. So it's, again, being determined and strong while we remove the obstacle, but temper our action with calm and forethought. We don't want to burn ourselves out by just going too much full tilt right away. Now, Mars in Sagittarius is really going to test this for us, right? Do we want to harness all of the action-oriented divine masculine energy of Mars without actually, doing real damage to ourselves or to relationships that actually matter to us, right? We want to use it as a divine will, as opposed to just lashing out aggressively. So same thing here. We want to temper our action with a rhythm, and make sure we don't blow a fuse right away as we are, attempting to move this obstacle out of the way. And so Mars can be an asset in this situation, absolutely, because that obstacle is very much related to the new moon solar eclipse and the degree that it's in. And so, but we want to make sure that we are have the energy to see it through. And the Wolverine, like I said, fearless, right? Fearless and ruthless. And it's such an interesting dynamic to have when you're talking about like the most feminine, emotional type of identity of the Queen of Roses. I think that's very interesting. But again, there's a fierceness that goes along and a passion that goes along with this card too, that we need to, acknowledge that our first priority needs to be loving ourselves. And when we have the capacity and the fearlessness to move some shit out of the way, then I think that we have the capacity then to really see all of our blessings and have gratitude for everything that has accumulated as a result of our actual work. But it only can come with this descent into the unknown realms, into the darkness of who we are. And so again, this will transpire in a number of ways for people. And again, it has a lot to do with where these things are happening in your chart and what's going on in your life. But it's not an easy time right now. And I think it's going to keep getting more difficult throughout January into February. So the Pleiadian Revival is upon us. And one of the main themes that seems to be coming out around this, that I will be speaking to very directly when I put out the report for this time, because we're going to look at the nodal axis in its relationship to the Pleiades through April, right? Through January through April is going to be the time when the nodes are in the Pleiadian territory. And so part of that is being in alignment with what is, and the natural world, natural resources, the wealth of the material world and the natural world, as opposed to Scorpio, which is incredibly powerful, but has more to do with giving ourselves over to something bigger than ourselves and producing something in our relationships and in our communion. And I'm not suggesting that we should or shouldn't do those things, but remember that it's an exact opposition to the Pleiades. So secrets will be revealing themselves with the South Node in Scorpio. Any kind of economic system that has been based on those secrets, or any kind of binding agreement that is not of the highest order, I think is going to not only show itself, but start to degrade. And with Pluto and Mercury in Capricorn right now in this conjunction, I think that we're seeing and cognizing, right, and interfacing mentally with those aspects that are ultimately falling away. And it's going to be the power itself of those binding agreements, even if you're unconscious of them. This is so why advertising is so absolutely insidious at every level. Branding, advertising, marketing. I mean, it's a double-edged sword for anybody who is in business, that is doing their business by way of any kind of spiritual work or anything else, because I've struggled with this a lot, and I continue to struggle with it, and I pray every day for clarity about how to move forward, because the more, as long as we're participating in this globally, it's a global reach of our economy based on nothing more than a binding agreement that a piece of paper has inherent worth. I mean, this is stuff that is going to be brought right to our awareness, and we are going to have to really live with the experience of being pulled towards what has inherent worth, what has inherent value, versus what is the value that is created as a result of our coming together. And that's not in itself a bad thing, but when you realize our entire global economy is based off of a ritual binding that of something that only has worth because we've all unconsciously agreed to it, well, that's going to be made it's going to be brought right to the surface for all of us during this Pleiadian Revival time. So that's something that we'll talk about later. But with the moon in Scorpio right now, these are opportunities. And of course, one of the things that's going to be happening today is the moon is going to be an opposite to asteroid Ceres, right? The goddess of the grain, the goddess of agriculture. She is in conjunction with the Pleiades right now. So when the moon is in opposite to this position, it's going to be in the same position, roughly within a degree of where it was at the full moon lunar eclipse back in November. So we're gonna be addressing where the sun was, the moon will be reaching where the sun was at the full moon lunar eclipse. And so we're going to be touching upon these issues so subtly in terms of what has inherent value and worth, what is the realm of Ceres, like I said, agriculture, the growth of that which sustains us and nourishes us, versus our own individual, personalized, emotional experience of what it is we've created together, and how that fares in opposition to what has inherent value just because it is, right? So this is why the bull and the golden calf or whatever was at one point worshipped, because it represented the fertility of the soil. And the ancients revered this, and maybe they went too far into worshiping the symbols and the idols that represented it because of how important the fertility of the soil is to our very existence. So again, these are all themes that are going to be covered very soon in the report once I get it out. But for now, let's look at today's astrology and unpack it and see what's going on for today. So let's see here. Here is our chart for today, and I'm going to check in with the chat right there. It's crazy. We both threw our backs out. I'm on day 5 of feeling like an old lady. Oh my God. I know. I totally thought about that too. I was just like, geez, it must be an Aquarius thing, or it must be like a second house. You know what it was? Jupiter coming into Pisces, like that's coming into the second house. Oh my gosh. And Cancer being the 6th house for Aquarian people, which is the healing house. That's where Black Moon Lilith is right now, is in Cancer in the 6th house. So I'm wondering too if there's just, these aspects are going to come out and be dealt with, whether we want to acknowledge them or not. So I thought about that for sure. Good thing I blew all my fuses yesterday. That is an incredible point. And some people really pre-wave a lot of this in order to hold space and hold the resonance and the template for other people who are not like fully engaged consciously in what's happening. So I think it's a good thing that you blew all your fuses yesterday, Alex K, because I suspect that had you not, it would have, it would have been that much more intense today. Now you kind of probably have some like, stability around the things that maybe other people are going to experience around you today. So here is our chart for today, my friends. And we'll go back. I'm going to close out a couple windows here, and we'll go back to the first real transit. So, and this will be a familiar moment here when we go back, because it was not that long ago that when we had everything in Scorpio, the same connection was getting made to our Neptune in Pisces. At the time was retrograde. Now moving direct. The fog of war is much thicker. The fog machine is cranked up. We don't know which way is up, down, left, right. Like, what's the difference between me and the rest of society? Am I fully engaged in the propaganda or not? Like, what is real? Oh my gosh, what is real is a big part of this. Neptune being direct. So, but the moon here in this trine to Neptune, if you remember when Mars and everything else was in Scorpio and making the same trine, which is a soldier, right? Well, let's take a look here. The obeying his conscience. A soldier resists orders. It's the readiness to face the results of a refusal to follow authoritarian patterns, right? You're ready. You're quietly ready to face the consequences. And the trine here to Neptune and the water trine is a very strong, stable feeling that we can, if we can swim, if we're not sinking, right, in the ocean, if we are able to manage ourselves within the full infinite experience of what is, right, the realm of consciousness, the Akashic field, the morphogenic field, right, the quantum experience, the astral realm, all of these places, time, right, the outside of time and space. Everything that Pisces represents, if we are capable of managing the space and we see everything without losing our connection to source and know the difference between us and everything else, even though we're fully immersed in it, then we're going to be able to obey our conscience and feel very stable in that. It really depends on what you are giving yourself over to with Neptune and Pisces. Pisces is where the mystics swim and the psychotics drown. And I would go even larger or more expansive than that most people without some sort of spiritual mastery here are going to drown in the realm of Pisces unless you really have the fortitude to swim with the sharks, right? So there's emotional stability here, even in the face of a moon in Scorpio and Neptune in Pisces. But it takes a very special person, I think, to be able to feel this emotional stability in the midst of a very destabilizing and confusing type of energy in general. But this was overnight, right? Look at it right here. We're looking at like 2 a.m., roughly 2 to 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So overnight in the dream state is probably when a lot of this came out. So then you have Mercury at this point is just about to meet Pluto, and same thing overnight, 3 to 4, it looks like 4 a.m., right? Eastern Standard Time. So still late overnight, maybe early in the morning, depending on where you are. On the other side of the pond, perhaps, you'll find that these two aspects coming together. And what's 26 degrees of Capricorn? This is the occult energy that is naturally flowing through everything. And when we say occult, it just means it's hidden. It doesn't mean it's evil. It doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean it's satanic. It's just hidden because it's not something that we materially can interface with. We have to be able to feel it with a sense that's not necessarily something that we are taught to utilize in the normal course of action, in our lives. But it's about the occult energy, the hidden realm of the spirit that flows through everything material. This is what's being brought to the surface and being brought to our awareness that is often repressed. And when we're talking about Pluto, it is in fact destroying everything in order to make space for the new. And that is what transformation really is. And so with Mercury there, again, very simply, with a Mercury-Pluto conjunction, is the repressed energy becoming very known to the conscious mind, to do a lot of very deep self-analysis and to think very critically and empirically and logically without attachment to emotion about these very raw and powerful experiences that we often keep down, shoved into the corner. That's what Pluto represents. And it's coming up to the surface of the conscious mind and awareness now. And also, too, the fact that energy is being there is a destructive element with Pluto involved. And again, this was happening overnight. So the dream state, I think, probably was either very revelatory, or you may not even remember what happened, but there may have been a opportunity when you woke up, or just a new feeling, right? Of just like, oh, I have a different awareness of this than I did when I went to sleep, right? And that feels like part of the completion aspect of the Four of Wands in some ways. So then the moon comes and starts to have all of the sextiles with the Capricorn energy. First, it's with Venus retrograde at 24 degrees Capricorn. She's the woman that has entered the convent at this point. What is it about our total commitment to this transcendent goal? What is the value of it? What is the value of what the society provides in order for an individual to have this experience? Taking some inventory about it. And specifically with the moon in Scorpio making a sextile, because this is the relationship the moon is going to make one after another. Venus, Pluto, Mercury, it's all going to be a sextile from the Scorpio moon, right? An investment opportunity, something that is harmonious, but we have to actually capitalize on it or invest ourselves or act on it in some way. This degree, 24 degrees of Scorpio, now we are entering Pleiadian territory. And even though it's Scorpio and it's directly opposite the Pleiades, it's no less activating. So if you had, 24 to 30 degrees Scorpio in your natal chart, you, especially if you have 25, 26, or 27, you have to have those in your chart to be able to designate yourself as a starseed. But then when you have the wider realm of degrees and markings, right? 24 degrees to 30 degrees of Taurus or Scorpio, for instance, you're still going to have, these are still Pleiadian markings, but what it does is represent the tension of the Pleiadian signature to the Scorpio element, which is way more about knowing the power, right? The Taurus element, there's no investigation. You just are in communion with what is, and finding connection to each other through the physical world, right? This is the Pleiadian nature. There's no investigation. There's no diving into the occult. There's no going down and grabbing the truth. And I'm not saying that Pleiadian people are not capable of this. It's just in opposition. Scorpio is just in opposition to this. It goes against and creates tension with these natural Pleiadian tendencies to go in and really get into the root of why things happen. A Pleiadian person is perfectly fine and happy and complete by just being in alignment with the inherent value of the material world. This is why the Pleiadians, I feel personally, why Earth, and lots of people have a lot of different things to say about it, right? A lot of people channel about it. A lot of people write about it. Everybody is an expert on the Pleiadians. But I do feel like that there is something very powerful about the resonance of Earth in general that really speaks to the Pleiadian nature. It's so easy. It's so simple. It's so seamless to have this connection to the inherent value of the natural world on Earth because it's just right there. So anyway, that's going to be discussed more in the Pleiadian Revival report as well. It's going to be way more focused on starseed activations and all of the starseed positions that are going to be relevant throughout the next couple of months. But in the meantime, with the moon here in Scorpio, this particular degree is like, how do we take an inspiring peak experience, like a spiritual experience, in some ways, and apply it to our everyday life, right? So the feeling we have about it, our intuition about it, maybe something subtle and subconscious about this peak experience applying to everyday life. Well, you can literally apply this feeling to Venus that has to do with, hey, what are the structures in society, in your tradition, in your culture, in your extended family, whatever Capricorn means to you. What are the structures that provide the opportunity to commit yourself to this, right? And so maybe there's something that comes through your feelings, your emotions, your intuitive knowing. It's subtle, it's subconscious, that then is applied to a very materially real inventory of how to commit yourself to this transcendent goal, whatever it is, right? And the transcendent goal is really everything else is pushed away, and you enter this space that is dedicated to this journey. And I think we all really want to commit ourselves to something, and we're very much reconsidering what that is, right? And the value and the worth of the cultural and social institutions that ultimately are being destroyed. So maybe there is a new peak experience. Maybe we've come to a revelation that's subtle and emotional, that we can then apply to this reorientation of our commitment, or apply it to how do we create a new structure or find a new structure, or maybe we have to rely on the structures within ourselves in order to really commit ourselves to this goal. And then the moon moves right past this point and comes into a sextile now with Pluto. And this is about being able to adjust very swiftly to changes in the environment. And when you're talking about Pluto, boy, there are changes, right? There are incredibly powerful changes that you don't come back from, right? Changes that are fundamentally altering the very nature of reality. And so, again, it's this ability to very swiftly make adjustments to yourself based on the needs of the environment that are in fact changing, and tuning into the requirements. There's a big element of tuning in to what is in order to adjust yourself. And with the moon, I mean, this is very easy to do. The moon is how we do this, right? We adjust ourselves emotionally and intuitively to the environment around us through what the moon represents. So again, there may be destructive elements with Pluto and Capricorn, but this sextile is really allowing us the opportunity to invest this very this type of adjustment to a very intense changing of the environment and tuning into it, right? The moon allows us to tune in anywhere emotionally and intuitively. And then right past that, we have the moon then make its sextile to Mercury in Capricorn. And again, this is about, now that Mercury is in the 27 degree of Capricorn, 26 to 27 degree of Capricorn, it represents the pilgrimage up the mountain and the perseverance that we need to use as we ascend, right? Our own consciousness ascends to higher realizations based on pathways that have been traveled and even created as a result of past teachers, past inspiration, right? The pilgrimage is hallowed ground by many, even though our own individual experience is unique to us when we get there. Mercury especially is leading us through our mind and our mental activity, and the moon making this sextile to Mercury at this point again is we have this opportunity to feel a really strong glorification of those values that allowed us to even reach this point to begin with, right? We can affirm ourselves once we get to the top of this awareness or this mountain, whatever it is for us. It's like a trumpet blaring, right? It's affirming, and it's coming from within, right? There is this affirmation from within that has much more to do with something bigger than ourselves that then we can invest and apply into. It's like gives us the emotional drive and the impetus for our minds to actually reach a much higher point, which is very difficult with that moon card at the center of everything and still feeling kind of trapped in our own past, right? So this is like a real powerful push emotionally and even subconsciously to get to the top of our own awareness through Mercury in Capricorn. Now, you can see here that this is going through the afternoon and reaches the point where it is in opposition to Ceres, which is in 20, let's see here. Yes. Let's go back a little bit. Yes, 29 degrees Taurus, 29 degrees Scorpio. This is definitely Pleiadian territory. And what's interesting about this is the 29 degrees Taurus is truly the material aspect of where it's going into Gemini, right? It's the symbol is a cobbler, working at the person's workshop. A cobbler is somebody who fixes shoes, right? Shoes go on your feet. You need both of them. Remember we talked about the walking meditation yesterday with the kiwi. You need both sides to work in unification, in union with each other and a rhythm. But you need both, just like you need both shoes to have understanding, right? You need to be able to, and truly to understand something, you have to take into consideration both sides. And so being able to put shoes on both of your feet is a symbolic representation of this. And Ceres, again, the goddess of the grain, there's something very material, there's something very natural. There's something very physical and tangible about understanding both sides of something that is directly influencing the cultivation of that which sustains us. Now, the opposite in Scorpio is this is a very difficult opposition, because this particular degree is symbolized by a woman who is pleading with the chief of their clan or their tribe for the lives of her children, who have done something to disrupt the stability of that group, right? So somebody has done something to break the law, or has done something to that has been a taboo, right? Like, we're getting into the late degrees of Scorpio here, because power is power, and sometimes people use it for their own ends, and sometimes it's used for something amazing. But the idea here is that love is the principle of redemption, right? This is about redemption. And what is interesting here is that Taurus, representing the physical world and the material world and nature as it is, and even Capricorn to a certain extent, which is nature as it unfolds, there's no mercy here, right? Nature has no mercy. Nature just is, and it's beautiful, and it has its own system and it provides. But there has to be two sides to this. And as much as we are feeling into love as the principle of redemption, and we're just like, need to be redeemed, every of us, right? All the time. But there is something very important to understand about the tension with asteroid Ceres in this moment that has to do with that redemption can only, even through love, there's something very important about understanding the full picture in a very tangible way that is directly linked to our own sustenance. And remember what Ceres did, right? When Persephone, when she was in the underworld with Pluto, she dried everything up. She retracted. She went into hibernation. Everything was dead. Nothing grew, right? It was an expression of her own grief. And then when her daughter came back to the surface for 6 months or whatever, then she was thriving and she was bountiful and she was growing, right? She was alive. And of course, this could just explain in symbolic form and narrative form the reason for the seasons, but it also shows how important that these cycles are to our own maintenance at a physical level. And as much as we are feeling, please forgive us. Please forgive us. They, forgive them. They know not what they do, right? Redemption and love. There is something very unavoidable that this is representing here. And I'm not exactly sure what this is going to necessarily look like. Again, it has a lot to do with where you're going to find it in your chart or in a chart of a situation or a larger context. But I do see, you can see it right here by the afternoon that this is going to become exact. And it doesn't mean that there is no redemption through love either. But the tension here is that there is a very angry mother who is going to punish everyone as a result of her daughter being taken away from her and not being able to do anything about it. So take that for what you will. It seems very powerful to me, especially as we are having this moon in Scorpio as the heart of the intuitive reading today. So then the moon moves into Sagittarius today as well. And let's not forget that Mars is at the degree of the solar eclipse, as I mentioned earlier. And what is the first real connection? Well, the moon in Sagittarius I went a little too far. The moon in Sagittarius comes into a square with Jupiter at 0 degrees, right? So 0 to 1 degrees Pisces, 0 to 1 degrees Sagittarius. Now, these are both realms that Jupiter is in control of, right? Pisces and Sagittarius. And the moon is way more comfortable in Pisces than it is in Sagittarius, in my estimation. So when these two come into this square, there is a feeling of like reawakening what it's all for, right? Within how we feel, right? And it's subtle and it's intuitive and it's emotional. And again, it's how we feel on the inside. The square, which is actually creating a T-square with the nodal axis, because you'll see here that right after this is when the moon comes into a conjunction with K2. So let's just look at that real quick. Within, right after the square is exact with Jupiter. So Jupiter is the T-square with the moon opposite the north node and the moon in conjunction with the south node. So not only is there a reawakening of what it's all for, right, with the moon in Sagittarius, there's also a very strong stirring of unconscious energies that is going to, that is very, number one, very connected to the moon. Number two, when we talk about the unconscious collective, we are talking about Pisces, and we are talking about the soul's karmic journey and the moon's own nodal axis as part of this. So Jupiter is the T-square to this whole point here. And Jupiter in 0 degrees of Pisces, one of the things I posted today is that, we can stay in the good graces, quote unquote, of Jupiter if we are capable of just stepping up and being part of what we have created. For better or for worse. And that happens a lot in Scorpio too, but in Pisces, there's no getting away from it, right? There's truly no getting away from it. And this first degree of Pisces is the farmer's market, right? Everybody brings their goods and their wares to the market, and we all mingle together in some sort of commerce, right? And Jupiter is like, well, we're all here, and for those who have sown and we're able to cultivate and reap something that is actually of value and is actually going to sustain other people and be an important part of this whole process, then there's going to be some level of, I don't want to say reward, but you know how Jupiter is. It really does. It's like good luck or good fortune or advocacy and expanding. It's like Jupiter is also expanding the extent of the market to be infinite, right? Like there's just everybody is there. But even though we got the moon in conjunction with K2 and there's this stirring of this unconscious energy that is really going to come up through the emotions and is really causing this tension of where we are going, right? Because here's the thing about Sag, and this is why Mars being in this position is so interesting to me today, because there's a real tendency to want to act on the meaning of things. Especially with Mars, really act, like go into battle mode about what needs, this karmic retribution. And with the moon here, with the South Node, that's also very strong. But remember, it's the South Node. It's where we've already been. And where we are being pulled to in order to evolve is very much not action-oriented at all. In fact, it has a lot to do with receiving the blessings of that which we have asked for or have been open to, right? The second degree of Gemini. And so Jupiter as the T-square here, right? This is the point that harnesses the tension of the opposition, or it is the fulcrum. It represents the actual fulcrum of the opposition. And it's, Jupiter's going to have Jupiter's way. This is the inner vision. Jupiter in Pisces, again, the Hierophant. It's going to be the representation of the true inner vision, true wisdom, and maturity, and doing the work to come to this conclusion as a result, rather than it just being given to you, right? That you have put all of this effort in, and now you're bringing it to bear at the collective level, and not necessarily to be judged by it, but to just fully experience it. And I just, by the end of the day, when this is much more active, Jupiter in Pisces, like I said, has going to have a lot to do with more about what we have been doing this whole time and bringing it to bear and expanding on that, right? I mean, if you bring rotten food to the farmer's market, you're still, you know what I mean? That's gonna make its way around the community real quick, and nobody's ever going to want to buy shit from you again. And you can see this really making itself known in a lot of different areas right now, that if what has come to pass or what you've brought to market is rotten, you really are going to risk either infecting everybody else, which could happen, right? Getting everybody sick if you, dispense of these things. But the other side of it is that you have something really valuable. It's just going to get expanded. So whatever it is, the truth and the true inner vision is going to be expanded upon, regardless of where you find yourself along this nodal axis. And so if you are still following the trajectory towards where we're all going to grow, then we are going to be open to receive what Jupiter is going to bestow upon us, as opposed to acting in accordance with some value systems that are on their way out, or that we think are valuable and represent something, but are really just values that maybe we have been that are outdated, or values that have been imposed upon us, or values that like we secretly don't actually care about, or that we don't truly believe, but we don't feel like, oh, there's caught in the ruins that we can't get out of, right? Oh boy, Jupiter is going to assist in that in one way or the other. It's not going to do anything, but it's just going to expand everything so that nothing can be, can't get away from any of it, right? It's all going to be there. And I think that's going to be very difficult for some people and amazing for others, right? So it really depends on your own personal experience. So I'm curious to see how this day unfolds, how the rest of 2021 unfolds, and I'm looking forward to, honestly, to the new moon on the 2nd to really just get this show underway, because the tension right now is so palpable. It's a little much right now. So I'm going to leave it at that for today, my friends. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you are interested in a reading, if you're interested in energy work to support your process, you can find everything you need in the description box below. And I am still offering the gift exchange. So if you haven't seen that on social media yet, you can follow the links to Telegram or Facebook, and you can find all of the conditions for the gift exchange that I'm going to be offering through the 2nd. So if you submit a review or a testimonial by the 2nd, I will honor that and still give the free reading. So you still have some time to put something together. If you really value what I'm offering and you want to make a public statement about it on my website or a review on Facebook, you can do that, and I will give you a free micro reading in exchange. I really like this. I have a couple already that I'm going to do. I posted them on my website. So if you want to see what people are having to say about the work we're doing together, you can go to the website that's in the description box below, and you click on testimonials, and you can see what people have been saying about the work we're doing together, because it's very powerful and it's very potent. And I'm very proud of myself, to be perfectly honest, that I'm able to facilitate this work with people. It's just been mind-blowing, and it influences me in a positive way just as much as it does with the people I work with. So I love to share that kind of stuff with people. I'm not trying to brand myself or idolize myself. Just let you know that other people are having good experiences and that we're all growing together. So get some rest if you need it, right? Take good care of yourself, self-love, self-care, right? Be easy on yourself. Nobody's going to necessarily be any easier on you than you can be with yourself. So, do what you can to extend some love to yourself today. And if you are interested in supporting this work in any way, or just to get more information, stick around to the end of this video, and there will be plenty of information for you to gather. So take care, everyone. I love you. I appreciate you so very much. Have a blessed day, and I'll see you tomorrow for the weekly astrology report. Okay? Bye, guys.